The expectations for the Houston Texans are very high going into this season. They had a great offseason. You get Stefon Diggs, Joe Mixon, Danielle Hunter, and CJ Stroud is in ascension mode right now. This is his second season. And you think about just how good he was as a rookie. At one point, he was a legitimate MVP candidate. So think about how good CJ Stroud could be this year with a better supporting cast, an improved offensive line, and the defense that should be top 10, maybe top 5 this year. Houston has enough to stop the Kansas City Chiefs from being able to three-peat this year. And I don't think that they're going to be unable to handle the high expectations that people have for them this year. The AFC South, to me, there really isn't a lot of competition for the division title this year. Houston should very well win this division for the second straight year in a row. Jacksonville still has some concerns with their offensive coordinator, their offensive line. I don't see Jacksonville being able to win the South this year. At best, I see the Jags being a 10-win team. Houston has the ability to not just win the AFC South, but they potentially could be in the conversation to have a first-round bye come playoff time because they could end up winning the 1 seed. They don't really have any big weaknesses on their roster this year outside of the question mark around their offensive line. You had a lot of guys that went down with injuries last year on that unit. And plus, even with the guys that are coming back healthy, you don't know just how good they're going to be as starters. Their interior offensive line still is a major concern, even with guys coming back healthy. But if they get offensive line play that is above average this year, this team could go very far in the postseason. CJ Stroud has a different mentality than what Lamar and Josh Allen have. You know, he's very calm, composed, and relaxed. It seems like the moments in games never become too big for him. And he's somebody that you can trust late in the fourth quarter against Patrick Mahomes to deliver a game-winning drive to get Houston to the next round of the playoffs. DeMeco Ryans is one of the best up-and-coming young head coaches. There are a lot of offensive-minded head coaches, so when you can find a defensive-minded coach that's very good, that's very promising when you think about the young quarterback that they have down there in Houston in CJ Stroud, because defensive-minded coaches, they often struggle to have success because they can't get the quarterback position figured out. DeMeco Ryans doesn't have the same problem that Antonio Pierce and Mike Tomlin have right now. So you know the defense is going to be good because that's the strength of DeMeco Ryans. And with you retaining offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick, it's hard to imagine CJ Stroud having a sophomore slump. And I never feel like the external factors that have nothing to do with play on the field hinder a team from how successful they're going to be. I don't think teams end up disappointing because they had too much pressure on them. The expectations were too high and they can't handle them. The normal reason for why teams disappoint is because they got a couple of injuries or maybe they weren't as good as what we initially thought they were going to be going into said season. Houston, with how consistent CJ Stroud was from week 1 to the final week of last year, there's nothing to me that I have anything to worry about with him if I'm Houston. And if I'm a fan of the Houston Texans, not only is this team good enough to make a deep playoff run, but they're good enough to win it all. There are only about 5-6 teams this year that have a legitimate shot at being able to win the Super Bowl, and the Houston Texans are one of them. You got a loaded secondary. You're going to have a really nasty pass rush. We've seen what Danielle Hunter has been doing in the preseason and in training camp. And think about Will Anderson. He's going into year 2 as well. And you think about how good CJ Stroud was, it's easy to overlook how good Will Anderson was because he also was drafted in the first round along with CJ Stroud in last year's draft. And he has potential to be a game-changing kind of player And when you think about how good this pass rush duo can be between Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, it's going to be really hard to move the ball on this Houston defense, and it's going to be hard to stop Houston's offense from putting a bunch of points on the board. This is the most deadliest receiving core in the NFL. You got two guys in Stefon Diggs and Tank Dell who are amongst the best route runners in the league and create a lot of separation. Every time CJ Stroud drops back to throw, at least one of those dudes are going to be open. And you got Nico Collins, who is emerging as one of the best deep ball receivers in the game. He can catch those 50-50 balls. He can also win those one-on-one matchups in the red zone. And Joe Mixon is an upgrade at running back from what you had in Devin Singletary. Houston should definitely be able to live up to the hype this year. There are always some teams that end up rebuilding and they end up getting to the point where now you expect them to make a run in the playoffs, where people kind of start to question if they can live up to the hype. Similar to the Detroit Lions last year, there were a small group of fans who were telling me in the comment section that I was overhyping Detroit and that they never were going to be able to make a deep postseason run because they're the Detroit Lions. Houston, with them not having a great past based off how dark things have been down there the past couple of years, people are using that same argument that they made against the Detroit Lions. The Lions are still the same old Lions. The Texans are still the same old Texans. That's not true. History doesn't define what you are as a football team because every year is different. The same Houston team that you think of last year is not the same Texans team that you're going to see this year. This team is deep at every position. You got CJ Stroud, who already, in my eyes, is a top 5 quarterback. I get nightmares thinking about how better he could be this year. Because how better can you get when you're already an elite quarterback and you're already top 5 at your position only 1 year into your career? You mean to tell me that he potentially could challenge Patrick Mahomes for the title of being the best quarterback in the game? He has the ability and the upside to do so this year. I got CJ Stroud winning MVP. I don't see how you don't win MVP when you're throwing the Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Stefon Diggs, Dalton Schultz, and you got Joe Mixon in the backfield. This is one of the most complete teams in the NFL when it comes to talent, top to bottom at every position, and they also have a lot of depth with great coaching. The recipe that you need to win in the playoffs, make it to a Super Bowl, the Houston Texans have all the ingredients to cook up a potential Super Bowl run this season. So I definitely believe that the hype for the Houston Texans is more than justified. If you don't see Houston as a 10-win team, then I just got to call you a hater, because Houston is one of the best teams entering this upcoming NFL season.